Welcome finally to another Real Talk with Joe and Cody. My name is Joe Skipper. I am the owner of Skipper Realty Group, brokered by eXp Realty out of Wilsonville, Oregon, and I'm with my friend Cody Wilhelm with Residential Mortgage. Hello, Cody.
Joe, it's good to be back. How you doing?
I know it's been a long time, man. We've been a couple weeks off based on, I don't know what it was the first week, but last week we were in Arizona with the family on spring break, and I was gonna do it, but the sun was just beating down, and I couldn't get the camera angles right.
Yeah,
But
we'll give you the pass. It's okay. It
but
feels
yeah,
it feels like we're on like season two now. There was a break, and now it's season two, and we got new episodes coming out.
totally,
It's
totally. No, I think that's actually right, and I think yeah, it's a good little break. People just that now they're wanting more. They want to see what happens this next season.
yes,
All of
getting
our
constant.
followers are just sitting on the edge of their seat waiting.
Yep.
um, but hey, man, so you've got spring break going on, huh?
Yeah, spring breaks this week for our children, and
Nice.
they are loving it already. The sleeping patterns have already changed, and
Oh yeah,
come Monday next week, it's going to be a harsh reality, at least for our
yeah,
oldest, because he's hit that early teenager. Just I'm going to sleep as long as I possibly can,
for
and
sure.
I remember that time, and it's a beautiful time. But man, Monday morning at 6:30, that's going to hit him pretty hard.
It's gonna come too fast. I have a 7-year-old daughter that already sleeps like a teenager and gets
Oh,
and
nice.
gets angry every morning. It doesn't need to be spring break. She just gets mad every morning that she has to get up early. So,
Yeah.
and acts as if it's the first time she's ever done that. Like, so
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
that's what we
No,
get
it's
to
just
deal with.
today.
Well, cool, man. Yeah, we just got back from Arizona and yeah, spent some time with my family and went to a Diamondbacks game and went to some pool time with friends that were ironically in Arizona as well. So we had like three or four families there that, were staying at different places, but we were able to meet up. And so it was a good but busy time and came back
Yeah.
early yesterday and kind of feeling the heat of that right now. But yeah,
You're
getting back into this and getting back with you is good and getting us started again in the
yes.
real estate world. So
You're feeling the vacation hangover where you're
yeah,
just
I
like
know. I
you need a
know. I
couple days
always
off from your vacation.
It's crazy. I do need that. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, it was busy. Work was good. I was able to help some clients out this weekend. You were able to help some clients out this weekend
Hmm.
with me. So it was good overall. It's the nice part about being in our line of work is we can kind of be on
Yeah.
vacation and still be there for clients when they need us. So that was good.
Yep. Just need that cell
But
phone and laptop.
I know, I know. I was on it a lot. But
Yeah.
that was good. But anyways, man, yeah, I just wanted to chat with you today. We had talked a little bit about a popular thing that's been going on for a while, especially when rates hit like super high, like in the sevens, eights,
Hmm.
but about buy downs and kind of what they are, what they mean. How does it help a seller in general or help a buyer in general and what a seller's responsibilities are for that. So I just wanted to
Yeah.
chat with you, kind of get us started on we've heard the famous 2-1 buy down or the 3-1 buy down or whatever that is. Like, what does that
Uh-huh.
mean? And kind of how does that work for a buyer that's going into this market with the rates, how they are today?
Yeah. So the buy downs, there's kind of pre 2023, before when rates were all still low and reasonable and everybody was just kind of used to it, there wasn't really much of a need or want or anything for temporary buy down. So if anybody was going to do a rate buy down, it was a permanent buy down, which is just a one-time fee and you're paying to get a lower interest rate. So that's a permanent buy down that's fixed, it's set on there for the whole life of your loan. Well, on a temporary buy down, it is just how it sounds. A temporary buy down is that, for example, a 2-1 buy down means that you're buying your interest rate down 2% for the first year, and then 1% for the second year, and then your third year it is the market rate of where you were at when you locked. So I worked up a couple different scenarios just to kind of go over, but there's a 3-2-1, a 2-1, and a 1-1, and so their 3-2-1 is buying it down 3% the first year, 2% the next year, 1% the next. So it is temporary. That's what I really try to stress with people, because it is an awesome feature when the rates are maybe a little bit higher than what you're comfortable with, or maybe they put you right at your max and you want to just have a little bit of breathing room, at least for those first couple of years, to kind of get adjusted to everything. So the big important thing that I try to stress is that it is temporary. right? They're fixed, they're set. It's not like it's going to adjust on you and you don't know when it's going to adjust. You're going to know, but it's not your forever payment. So just kind of making sure that in that first year, you don't get too comfortable with what that payment is and you change your spending habits. And then year two, now your payment's gone up and you kind of forgot about it. So that's the big thing. But a little bit of a quick overview of it. So knowing that there's various ways to get that lower payment. The only way that it can be used or paid for is by the seller. So as a buyer, you can't pay to have the temporary buy down. As a lender, I can't pay for it. It has to be paid for by the seller, and it is in the form of closing costs. So when you're putting together an offer, you'd want to connect with your lender and find out how much would it be to do a temporary buy down, how much is the cost going to be, and then you need to factor that into your offer. That way it is all done up front. Everybody's on board with it. But I worked up a scenario, a couple different scenarios, just to give you an idea, because I think for a lot of people, 1% in interest rate doesn't necessarily mean a lot other than it's 1%, right? It's kind of like you need something tangible that can really give you an example of how big of an impact 1% can be. So I worked up a scenario with a $650,000 purchase price with 20% down. Just kind of I don't know if that's average around here. It's for somewhat average,
Yeah.
general price down payment. Obviously 20% down is not required. You can do a temporary buy down with 3.5% down on an FHA loan. So it doesn't matter. This is just the example I worked up. But to give you an example, so today in this scenario, the market rate is 7% for this scenario. So that's going to put your principal and interest payment at $34.59 per month. Okay,
That's crazy, by the way.
I know, right? So $34.59. If you did a 3-1 buy down, that cost for the seller is going to be $23,000. So you're going to have to ask the seller to pay $23,000 so that you can get this temporary buy down. And here's how much of an impact it's going to make. In your first year, instead of having 7%, because that's the market rate, so you're going to go down, your first year's payment is going to be based on a 4% interest rate. That's going to put you at $24.06 for principal and interest. So it saves you $1,053 per month for the first year, right? So $12,636 for the first year. And then the next year, it's gonna put your payment at $31.17, or excuse me, $27.91. So then it's gonna save you $688 the following year. And then the next year, it's gonna save you $342 a month. And then your fourth year, it's gonna put you where you're at, where the market was. It's gonna put you at 7, and you're gonna stay at 7 for as long as you have that loan. So it kind of front loads. I mean, the cost, that $23,000, that is the cost that the seller is paying, because they are paying your interest, prepaying your interest for those first 3 years. So like on a 2-1, obviously $23,000 is a lot of money, right? So you're asking them to really help you out. A 2-1, because it's only 2 years of interest that you're paying down, is only $12,000. So it can get a little bit more reasonable if you're looking for just 1 year or maybe 2 years. It's going to be a little bit more where you can meet in the middle. But here's the other thing that I wanted to share, because not only is this good for buyers, but it's also a really good kind of selling point for sellers too. Instead of potentially dropping the purchase price, which I know that kind of has a catch to it, and it's you see price drop $20,000, it's like, ooh, hey, that's kind of sexy. But I worked up, if the seller dropped the price by $20,000, it would drop your monthly principal and interest payment by $106 per month. So you can see, if the seller is going to part ways with $20,000, they can part ways with 20 just right off the price, and that's awesome. It's going to save somebody $100 a month. But if they dropped it 20 grand, maybe they could squeeze out 23. You're going to save a buyer $1,000 a month for the first year, and then almost $700 for the next year. So like, it is a huge incentive for the buyer. Like, that is that is kind of life changing, at least for those first couple of years, right? That might be the difference between them than being able to get into something comfortably, with the hope, obviously, that interest rates are going to come down in the next couple of years, and they can get in something that's fixed and they don't have to worry about their payment changing. But it's a great way for both buyer and seller to be able to benefit. This could help a lot of sellers. And I know this isn't something new. This isn't like this just came out yesterday. This has been going on for a
Yeah,
while, but sometimes it just seems to kind of go through waves of having more interest and popularity to it. And then other times it just doesn't seem to matter. And recently it feels like there's been a little bit more push for just finding different ways to obviously get creative with trying to bring costs down on purchasing
for
homes.
sure.
So
For sure. I've seen it the same thing, and that's what I'll say to sellers before we lower the prices. The same thing is that it makes it significant as long as they have a good buying agent and a good lender on their side, on the buyer's side. It does make sense. Um, More so for a buyer to get that 2-1 buy down or 3-1 buy down than to lower that price. I think it looks cool maybe to say that you've lowered it this much and
uh-huh.
you might get a smoking deal on a home, but it as to the at least the short-term benefits, definitely for sure for a buyer it's much
Mm-hmm.
more appealing than saying, okay, well, 20K over 30 years is, like you said, using those numbers is insignificant compared to the buy down, especially if they can
Mm-hmm.
qualify for that full price that you're at currently.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always suggest that is like rather than lower the price, let's see if we can offer that and see if that gets some more interested buyers in there. But that leads me to my
Mm-hmm.
question of why is it that the seller has to contribute? Like, why can't the buyer just buy down their own, 2-1 buy down?
It's a good question. I don't know the official answer to that.
Yeah.
I just know that it's a seller only covered cost. Um,
Okay.
I
Yeah, I know
don't.
it's interesting because you do have so when you wanted to buy down, if you want to buy down your personal rate, there is a limit to that, right? Like I can't
Yeah.
personally buy down my rate to 1%.
Right. Yeah,
Correct?
you can buy it down. There's a thing called QM, which is qualified mortgage, which is essentially it's like a back office type of alert that would go off that says, "Hey, you as the buyer, you are not allowed to spend this much money in fees." And because a rate buy down is technically considered a closing cost, so it's part of the fees. So
Yeah.
most programs have a 3% max. So I guess that kind of answers probably part of the question as to why a buyer couldn't do it is because it will exceed that threshold. Um, and there's not the same limit on an investment property, but the temporary buy downs don't apply towards investment properties. So it can just exceed that limit of what is legally allowed per all the different loan programs out there.
I see. And so with that being said, the seller, is there a limit to what the seller can provide in that 3-1 buy down? Because say if you get into a higher end home or,
Mm-hmm.
$1 million home or higher, obviously that price to buy it down is going to be more, right? Is
Yeah.
there a limit to that for the seller or the lender doesn't care as long as the seller is contributing to it?
Yeah, there's a limit on what the sellers can contribute. And like, for example, conventional loans, there's a limit based on how much the buyer is putting down. So if the buyer is putting down 5%, then the seller is only going to be able to contribute 3%. If they
Okay.
put down 10%, now the seller can contribute 6%.
Okay.
Like on a jumbo loan, if the buyer puts down 25%, the seller can contribute 9%. So it's really kind of just based on FHA is 6%. So each loan
Okay.
program with in combination of what the down payment is will determine how much the seller can offer. So there is a situation where, they could cover the temporary buy down plus all the other closing costs,
Okay.
because there's the wiggle room. And then you have other situations where they might they might only be able to do the temporary buy down, or maybe they can only afford to do a 2-1 buy down because of the limitations on what it's going to be. And obviously, it all kind of translates. If you have a lower priced home, the
Yeah.
mortgage is going to be lower, the interest is going to be lower. So it's not like you're going to be running into a $20,000 temporary buy down on a $250,000 house.
Yeah. And does that, I think you answered the question indirectly is, I assume that works for any loan program. They can participate in a 2-1 buy down with any loan program. It doesn't require a particular buyer or a
Mm-hmm.
particular, situation. Anyone can participate in that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. and it's per lender too. So like
Okay.
just because it's offered, some lenders may not offer every option of that for each
Okay.
loan program. Um, it is available and it is an option, but yeah, some maybe don't have a 3-2-1 buy down, but they have a 2-1
Okay.
buy down. I know some jumbo lenders don't offer any type of temporary buy down. Like our
I see.
jumbo, we will only do a 2-1 buy down. We won't do the 3-2-1. So it's going to be somewhat
Okay.
lender specific, but in general, to my understanding from everybody that I've talked to, there's some form of temporary buy down for most mortgage companies.
Yeah.
Some may not, but in general, you should be able to have some type of resource for that.
And that is why it's so important for buyers to have a lender on hand, because I think
Mm-hmm.
that these options are just not sitting there for you unless you have someone that's kind of guiding you through the process. And I think, I feel bad for the people that don't have a lender, either a lender in general or a lender that doesn't fully communicate with buyers, because especially in this case scenario, and I'm just thinking out loud here, but like, man, like if you didn't know about it, you could afford a $700,000 home at the current interest rate, but you were able to potentially participate in a 2-1 buy down, and you didn't
Mm-hmm.
know it either from your lender or your agent or the seller's agent. That would be super frustrating
Yeah.
to realize after the fact that you could have at least saved like a lot of money in those first couple years, and then in turn either handled the current rate that you locked in at, or refinance down that road. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's just important, especially like in this market. It's just a different market. It's a crazy market, and it's no longer just put a for sale sign in the yard and throw money at things like
Yeah.
because you can afford it. It's a 3% rate, so who cares? It's
Yep.
definitely, nickels and dimes and all that stuff adds up, and those short-term benefits for a buyer, I think, can really change their life in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Not to sound too dramatic with it, but it can really affect people and how
Yeah.
their daily function of life goes by just doing some program like this that I think most people or some people don't know about because they just haven't been told about it. So
Yep. Yep. It can really make a big difference, especially for how drastic of a difference it can make
yeah,
each month. But again, obviously, like going back to what I was talking about at the beginning, I really just make sure that when going through this, that they really understand this isn't permanent. Yes,
yeah,
the hope is that in the next couple of years we'll see rates that are lower than they are now,
for
but
sure.
nobody knows. I mean, at this point, shoot, I think we were
Absolutely.
all thinking that we'd be in a different spot
I
than we are
know.
now, but
I
here we
know.
still
I
are,
know.
and it doesn't seem to be changing quite yet. So,
For
because
sure.
I really
No,
don't want to get that call like, I can't afford my
I
payment
know.
anymore. Like, why didn't you tell me about this?
Well, and it kind of like we could dive deeper into it, but you guys make sure that they know that, and you obviously have said it today, but it's you got to qualify for that rate, the final
Mm-hmm.
rate. Like you've got to
Yes.
know you can afford that. You've got to know you can do that. It's just an awesome benefit for the first couple of years or first 3 years
Yeah.
to not have to pay it, but you have to be ready to pay that.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's no guarantees. Rates could go up, and then you're
Mm-hmm.
then you're in a savings mode when like 3 years from now,
Yeah.
or rates could go down and you refinance. So yeah,
Yep.
so it's kind of a complicated process, but
It
thank
is.
you, man. Thank you for that
Yeah.
information. I think it's really helpful. And if you guys have any questions about this 2-1 buy down, 3-2-1 buy down, or whatever goes along with that, please feel free to call Cody, and he will answer any questions that you have. If you have any issues as a buyer and want to find any information out that way with me, just feel free to give me a call as well. But yeah, thank you, Cody. It was good
Yeah.
to see you. We had to
Good to
reintroduce
see you
ourselves
too.
after a couple weeks. The new season of
Right.
real talk is here, and so we're ready to go. But yeah, no, the two
Yeah.
one buy down's great. It's cool to hear that, and cool to hear
Yeah.
what you guys can offer. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to be able to feel like you can provide something um, that helps when things are just a little more. It'd be like
Yeah,
having a discounted gas program. It'd
for
be
sure,
sweet to have it. If I could have it,
for sure,
I'd do it.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, man. Until next
Thank
week,
you.
we'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah. Sounds good, man. Have a good one.
Okay, see ya.